going to be true to my word. A really warm welcome to everybody to our Somerset Early Years Partnership. This is only the second of our newly formed partnership, but some very familiar faces online tonight with us. We are expecting around 70 people this evening, which is great, really good news for the partnership as we move forward. We've got some members of my team joining us tonight. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Alison Jeffrey, Early Years Lead, and joining me from the Early Years team, we've got Nikki, Sarah, Heather, I think we've got Ali Highfield, also Sam Davies as well. Joe Sawyer's with us. Gosh, we've got the whole team with you tonight. So so welcome to our partnership meeting, as I say. Okay, let's move on. So the agenda, what to expect this evening. We have got a really packed agenda, in fact, but some great information and some updates from key partners and things happening strategically within the local authority. So we're joined in a minute by Amelia Walker, who's Deputy Director for Education, Partnerships and Skills. She's doing her roadshow. Oh, apologies. She's doing her roadshow to let us know about the key changes in school and setting governance in terms of the way that things are reported within the local authority. We've then got some reforms updates, just a short reminder about some new things that you can access. We're doing a short funding and budget update. Heather's bringing to you for the first time ever a sufficiency report, actually, which really highlights the areas of undersufficiency within the local authority, which hopefully you'll find helpful and useful. Nikki and Sarah are going to do some workforce recruitment input, and it's called Thinking Outside of the Box because of the current workforce issues that we're all facing in early years. We then have a short update on early years communities with Sarah, and then we have a chance for our partner agencies to give updates, and we've had some pre-agenda items been sent through, so we've got some great updates to share with you this evening as well. Hopefully we'll have questions and debate time afterwards. But if for any reason we run short, because I said we are very packed tonight in terms of agenda items, we'll make sure that you can ask questions during the chat, and we'll make sure we send out a frequently asked questions document and answer your questions after the event. Okay. As I said, please do feel free to interact using the chat function at the top of your screen. You'll see a little circle with a couple of lines in it. It's a bit like a speech bubble, so please use that if you'd like to make any comments, questions, etc. You could also use your hands up if you'd like to come off mute and actually talk to us. Please do keep your videos off and yourselves muted for the time being, unless obviously we invite you to contribute, because it just basically saves the sound and the internet tonight. And we will, as I said, try and answer as many questions as we possibly can. Okie dokie. So just a little bit of a recap, just for reminders, because some of you won't have been with us at the last partnership meeting. So this is all about making sure that the early years sector's voice is heard. So today's meeting, like the first one, is really to kind of introduce the new concept in terms of making sure that information, themes, the big kind of strategic issues in early years are fed up through the right channels so that they can get the consideration that they need within the local authority and further afield. So the partnership is our key mechanism in early years to make sure, as I said, our voices are heard and the things that matter most to you are dealt with and considered appropriately. So the partnership has changed in terms of the way that it's now being used for that mechanism of communication, making sure that those big ideas are heard. Those involved and have always been key partners include, amongst others, people and representatives from health, the area Senko team, the arts, skill, the various colleges in Somerset, English as an additional language services, Somerset Association Sports Partnership, early help, speech language therapists, and loads more. So you can see that it's a real kind of key time for collaboration amongst our partners. It's also for you to come in as well, so that this is a really holistic, collective conversation about the things that really matter. The idea is that it's going to be used as a forum. So as I said, those big ideas come from you and you can set agenda items. We did give the opportunity for agenda items to be put forward by the sector. We didn't have any this time. That's absolutely fine. But please do bear in mind in the future that this is your forum to get your views across. And if there's anything big happening in terms of what you're doing with your involvement with early years, then we'd love to hear about it. And please do ask for an agenda item and a slot in future meetings. Amelia's going to do her roadshow in a minute, and she's going to explain more about how the partnership fits in with the governance within the local authority and further. And Schools Forum has always been the key way of making decisions about early years funding, for example. The partnership will have a part to play now. So again, it's just really for your voice to be heard and for you to know the information about the things that matter most. And clearly a really great opportunity for collaboration and linking with our early years communities. Our model that is still going strong, making great headway with our communities, loads of great stuff being hosted by them. And again, bringing this collaboration with our partners together makes for a really strong early years sector in Somerset. That's just an idea of the kind of, again, wider community that's involved with the partnership meeting and who you have access to when you want your voices to be heard. Okay. Right, I'm going to pass over to my colleague Amelia Walker. As I said, she's Deputy Director for Education Partnerships and Skills. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then she's got a presentation to give to you. Thanks, Amelia.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to start sharing, and I've just got a few slides to provide you a little bit of background, some of the conversations we're having about how we can come together to set our strategic direction as a sector. And when I say sector, I mean 0 to 19 education. So that big picture of children from their very teeny tiniest early ages right out to the other side of FE and further and higher education. So it's a big vision and it's about how we deliver that together. I'm going to be honest with you, we've had some bumps in the road as we've gone along. And this is about learning from the past, making things better for the future. And I think there's a lot to learn from the way that partners collaborate in early years. And we want to build on some of that learning across the whole of the education sector. So I just want to share with you a little bit about some of the things that have been happening over the past year to 18 months. It's very easy for things to happen that don't cross your immediate attention. You know, I've got one of those jobs where I pay attention to things like this, but that's my bread and butter. I think most of our colleagues on the phone have got more important things to do than to be focusing on what the local authority is doing. Sometimes it's worthwhile just taking stock and being aware of some of the conversations that have been going on. So just want to share a bit of that with you. So back in spring and summer 2020, well, I don't need to share this with you. You all know we had it's something that we all couldn't escape from, and that was COVID. One of the things that was really evident was that COVID changed a lot of things about the way we work. This meeting is a good example of that. I've been working in education a long time, and we certainly didn't do the kind of things that we're doing virtually. And it wasn't even very long ago. It's hard to almost remember. We've come quite used to doing things online, haven't we? One of my colleagues said, you know, we banked 5 years of change in 2 weeks. So we all worked out how to make our computers work. I was among you in that. But I don't know if you're also aware, I'm sure conversations have been had, but there was a very critical SEND inspection. So inspection of how we deliver for pupils and children with special educational needs and disabilities. It really shone a light on culture and practice about how we are with each other. And the inspector said we had a blame culture. Well, that's not the kind of environment that we're trying to create, is it? So we need to get under the skin of why that might be and what we can do to create a positive working environment for everyone, because positive professionals make for good lives for children and good support for children. So having had those two things that were really learning opportunities, within the LA, we started talking about new ways of working and how we wanted to move forward. And there was a formal consultation, which some of you may have contributed to, on reforming Schools Forum. Now, having had all of these conversations, there was then, and someone described it as a watershed moment, and it was around high needs funding, which is funding particularly that supports children with special educational needs and disabilities. There was a lot of anxiety and concern from some of our colleagues in the sector about how that was shared. And my boss, Julian, had occasion to apologize, and we had to learn the lessons from how such a thing could have unfolded, because mistakes do happen, but you've got to learn from them. So Julian wrote out to all stakeholders, and I hope that it may have crossed your desk, a letter about some proposals to how we work. And we asked for feedback. We got feedback from a number of colleagues, which was very welcome. And then we wrote a second letter. And one of the things that came back, and what we said in that second letter that came from Julian, was colleagues were saying, we hear what you're saying. We think that it's the right thing to do, but it's quite complicated and we need more time to get our heads around what you're saying and to understand what this is going to do for us. So that's why I've been going around talking to people and talking to you tonight about those proposals. So if you saw that letter, you'll have seen something on it. I know it's really teeny tiny, but the fine detail is, and this is the proposal that went out in the first instance. And I'm going to share in a moment another version of this, which is where we have got to. But really, just to help you understand what this little bit confusing diagram is about. So your yellow blobs on this picture, those are meetings that already happen. So those are groups that already exist in Somerset. You may be aware of them, you may be involved in them, or they may have passed you by entirely. So you'll, and I know it's very small, but the Early Years Partnership is on there, and the Early Years Communities is on there. So there are all these things that were going on. The blue dots were things where we spotted that there were some people we weren't speaking to as often. And as I said, I think early years is an example of good practice. There are opportunities for people to engage, but not every sector in education does have those opportunities. Our multi-academy trusts, for example, which are groupings in the school space, we don't have a forum where we speak to them on a regular basis. And there were other groups that we identified who were kind of outside of the conversation. So how could we bring them in? So that was the idea, is that you would have, and that white bit in the middle is a new board, and the lines was to connect in all of these groups to make a coherent whole. So that was what went out to people to get their feedback on how that might work. I just want to share with you what the feedback that we got. And the most common thing that people came back and said to us was, okay, if you're going to create a new board, what about my sector? Is my sector going to be adequately represented? And there were some concerns that that might not be the case. But then a really interesting question, which was about power, saying some people feel disempowered in the system, and won't your system just make the powerful more powerful? How are you going to give power to the people who feel disempowered? And then I think very relevantly for a lot of colleagues, they said, well, that's all very well. You can have a board. I haven't got the time to sit on it. But there are some things I do want to get involved in. I want to find out about some things when it matters to me. And how are you going to make sure that that happens? How are you going to make sure that I get the information that I need? The proposal is that we called a recovery board. I'm going to be honest with you. I think pretty much everyone thought that was a rubbish name. So they didn't like that. A lot of people came back saying we don't like the word recovery because actually we've got a bigger idea of what we want to do. It's not just about getting back to where we were. Where we were wasn't where we want to be. We want to be better than that. So how can we have that big vision? And then following on from that, what is our big vision? So you can talk about where people are going to come together to talk. What are they going to be talking about? Where are we headed? What's the big plan? And then I think, and I have some colleagues in early years have fed this back as well, that we have some individuals who've really invested in building their technical understanding of the detail of budgets and finance. We know that most of us, I'm included in that, don't spend all my time looking at the fine detail of some of these complicated financial things. We have colleagues among us who've really invested in understanding that detail. But we don't want to lose that. So if we change schools forum, might we lose that? And finally, and this is education, isn't it? How do we get the right skills around the table? How do we make sure that if there's a group who's going to be setting that big direction, that they've got the right skills? All really, really good questions. So in order to respond to those big questions, we've updated the proposal. And the first change is that what we had said was that there would be a seat around the table, and that seat would be for this part of the sector, and this number of seats would be for that part of the sector, etc. We said, okay, we're going to change that. And instead, what we'll do is that anyone can apply to sit on the board. Absolutely anyone. So it's not just because you've got a particular job or you're really senior in an organization. Anyone can apply to sit on that board. And what we'll be looking for is people who have really useful skills, who have breadth of knowledge, who understand how different things work, who might have worked in different parts of the system at different times, who can help us with that big picture, who can have be a really helpful contributor to that conversation, because it's not always the most senior person who knows the most or who knows about particular things. And also make sure that you've got new people coming onto the board all the time, so making sure that there were term limits and that would change over time. So I think the other thing was about strategy. So we want to give the board a specific responsibility to agree a strategy. Where are we headed? Call the board the strategy board. And also make some changes to the plan for schools forum, and I'll say something about that. And then also do some work on communications. And again, I think that's somewhere where early years has led the way in terms of the communications that is available to stakeholders. I think if there's more that we can do, then we want to do that. But also I think there is more across the board in terms of some other parts of the education sector where our communications can be improved. So we want to do that. Just to be really clear about Schools Forum, you may or may not know, but there's a group called Technical Working Group. So if we have all decided that technical understanding is a really, really useful thing to have, then Technical Working Group is a really good thing to have in the system. And people who've been involved in that say, do you know what? That's a really quite a useful meeting and it does good work. So the idea is that Schools Forum will be more like Technical Working Group, because that's the thing that people really value in the system, is people who understand that technical detail and can do some of that work on the behalf of the rest of us. There are subgroups at the moment. There's an early years subgroup, and the idea is that the early years partnership would be the group that takes forward that important role around engagement, and I'll say more about that in a moment. And there's something new that's been set up called the High Needs Deficit Management Group. So that you would have a new look Schools Forum, and the idea of that Schools Forum is that they would look at our resources, look at our finances, and be able to advise on how you can achieve the strategy with the money that you've got. Because that's how really good financial work should be, is that you set your big vision. You say, this is what we want to achieve. This is where we want to go. This is what we want for kids. And then you look at your money and say, okay, how are we going to use our resources? How are we going to use our money to achieve that? So the Somerset Education Strategy Board is the new thing we're going to call it. It will have an independent chair, so someone who doesn't work in one part of the system or another, but is independent. And that appointment process has just gone live. So if you're interested, someone you think would be really good for that, that advert is now live. There would be 16 board members who would go through an appointments process, and we'd be looking at high value skills. We're looking at what they know, what they've been involved in, what they can bring to that conversation. As I said, anyone can apply. And then really thinking about the different meetings that happen, making sure that we have got really, really good communication, but also that we have engagement. And that's what the early years partnership is all about. It's about opportunity to hear what's going on, but also to be part of a discussion. I've got a big circle there, the early years partnership. Part of that really important conversation about where we engage and have that dialogue, understand what's going on. We always feel like that, don't we? Sometimes you just got you lift your head up, have a look around, see what's going on around you, and then it's back into that day job. It's just so intense, so important. And this is partly about thinking about purpose. How do we make sure that everything we do has got a really clear purpose? So sometimes you just want the information. Sometimes you want to have more of a dialogue and understand things and be a part of that conversation and shaping things. Sometimes there's representation, and we do have things that are representative in the system. Just someone represents me and where I come from. Other times you want to talk about a particular topic. So we've got a group that looks at CPD, we've got a group that looks at RE, we've got a group that looks at finance, looks at the estate. And I think there are probably more groups out there. We've only started to identify some of the things that are going on and try and bring them all together. But also connecting to the national and the regional. And that's something we really saw through COVID, is that, we've got lots of things to talk about in Somerset, but also knowing what's happening nationally is really important. We need to have those connections. So just a few key messages. So the early years subgroup, we've got some colleagues who have invested heavily in that over the years and incredibly grateful for that contribution. And the time for that has now come to an end. So the subgroup will cease. And that will be important to make sure that Schools Forum, the new look Schools Forum, will look at the technicalities of finance questions for the whole budget, and that will include early years to make sure that we've got people who are focusing on that detail. The early years partnership, hello, that's you here now. That will be the key place where the sector comes together to engage about big issues. So that's the purpose of this meeting. Big topics, big discussion, coming together to really engage and try and get as many people as possible into that conversation. So everyone has a voice, everyone can engage with those questions. And as we said, we'll be appointing that strategy board. So think about applying, or you think, well, that's not for me, but do you know what? I know someone who would be great for that. Encourage them to put their name in the hat. And those applications should be going out very, very soon, before the end of term. Just a few more minutes, and I just want to share a couple of thoughts, thinking forward about the big things that we should be talking about. And one of the things is about culture. We've just been collecting some ideas from people about what it should feel like to work in education. And these are some of the things that people have been talking about. And if you've got things that you would like to add, it would be great to hear about them. So what about relationships? And working in a positive way is about having trust. It's about having honesty. People have been talking about it's important that we think the best of each other. And that when we come into a conversation, that we are coming in recognizing that everyone does the job through that passion for kids and they're coming in for it for the right reasons, and meeting people in that space, that we build on our strengths. We know what our strengths are. We build on them. We think about the long term. We think about the big picture, and we don't wait for a crisis. We're ahead of the curve. We're being proactive. And I think sometimes we have sometimes come to problems with numbers when we need to come with solutions. And this is a lovely idea. Have you heard of servant leadership? I think that's something I see every day in Somerset. It's an idea that as leaders, we're servants. We're there to serve our staff. We're there to serve the kids. We're there to serve the community. And it's a lovely, lovely idea. But all those things that people are bringing to the table about the kind of culture we want to have. And that's something that'd be really great if you're talking about in places like this, about thinking about what it feels like to have a really positive culture. Another thing is about our strategy, and now it would be for the new board to think about strategy, but I just wanted to share some of the things we've been pulling together so they can get off on the off to a flying start, and just hearing some of your feedback. So one of the things that we want to talk about is sharing. And I know that early years communities are a place where sharing already happens. And that's how we build capacity, isn't it? When we've got small settings, small schools, small trusts, we're quite a small system, and small is beautiful, but it also means that we need to work really hard to make sure that we can get economies of scale. So how do we think creatively about sharing? And I think there's some great practice in early years to learn from. Thinking about sustainability, it's a big thing on our minds, isn't it? It's about the long term. How do you make sure that the finances, the buildings, and things like the climate emergency, that we're planning for the long term? Because if we all feel confident that the future is bright, we know we've got good things in place to assure that. Knowledge and skill is really important for us. I know there's been a lot of training recently, and that's exactly the kind of thing that we need to be investing in, isn't it? It's about adults being on the front foot, having all the information, all the knowledge that they need to be able to support children to the highest level, making sure we've got really good plans to support the knowledge of our practitioners, so our practitioners are supporting the knowledge of our children. And finally, about inclusion. We've been talking about inclusion a lot because we've had that critical SEND inspection, which has been a real opportunity to think about what it feels like to be inclusive. And it's about mindset. And it's not just about SEND. It's about any kind of inclusion, anyone who might sometimes feel excluded. And it's about how education can change society. One of the things that's come back from parents and families is saying, do you know, I think my local setting, my local school is inclusive. Do you know what isn't inclusive? Is Somerset, is the society. Well, actually, that's what education is for, isn't it? It's about changing society for the future and changing children's futures. So just some ideas there. Any reactions would be really valuable. I don't know if there's any, I saw there was a question came through, so I don't know if colleagues wanted to ask any questions or make any comments.
Yeah, we've had a question come through, Amelia, from Samantha. So this looks lovely, but it's very complicated. How are our voices going to be heard when making funding decisions? Does this mean schools decide on our funding allocation?
No, it doesn't. So Schools Forum has always made so that the formal ability to make decisions about the funding has always sat with Schools Forum. That's what the legislation says, but it's just called Schools Forum because it covers the whole budget. The intention is that Schools Forum will be more tightly focused on finance than it has been in the past. And it will be our responsibility to make sure that the group that sits on Schools Forum, it does have to be representative. That is in the law, as it always has been. Nothing has changed. We're still following the law. That has the right people with the right expertise in it to be able to look at the whole package when it comes to finance. So that has not changed. But the really important thing is we have high quality conversations about money. And this here now in the Early Years Partnership is the place to do that. It's to understand the money, to understand our objectives, what we want to achieve, and to be able to have a conversation. So this is where that conversation will happen. Any other questions or comments?
Thanks, Amelia. Yes, we've just had one come in again from Samantha. Thank you for your answer. So will we still have early years reps on the schools forum and the voting will be balanced? Question mark.
Yes, that is required by law, so that nothing will change about the voting on Schools Forum. What's changing about Schools Forum is the focus of those meetings, which will be more tightly focused on the financial questions and the things that a Schools Forum has to vote on. But the regulations and the law have not changed. Any other questions or comments?
Not that's coming through on the chat. I don't know if anybody wanted to put their hand up if they wanted to ask anything. Otherwise, we can direct questions after the event to Amelia.
It would just be great just to get a, yeah, Kim. I can see Kim's hand, but I can't hear you, Kim. I don't know if you're on mute.
I found it. Sorry.
There you are.
Sorry. It's a new
You're
screen.
okay.
I was just interested in your thoughts on the recently Early Years Alliance highlighted the difference in what government had said it would cost per child to educate a child this year in early years compared to what all local authorities. I know this isn't just a Somerset issue at all, and in particular the element of the high needs funding. And I just wondered, I thought the presentation was great, so thank you for that, and it sounds really interesting. But I just wondered how you guys are thinking about the bigger picture, knowing that that gap is there, and we all want to be positive and we all want to do our best for the children, but we're just finding it increasingly difficult with that £4 whatever per hour for the 4 to 5 year olds or 3 to 4 year olds. And I just wondered what your thoughts are on that gap, and are Somerset sort of actively lobbying on that? And do you think it'll change, really? You know, are we in it for the long term, that we will always be underfunded, do you think?
Well, certainly in all the time I've been in education, it has been the perpetual issue in early years, hasn't it? of trying to deliver one of the most important and complex elements of the whole educational journey, with funding that has always been very, very tight. That's always been an issue. So I think it would be naive of any of us to think that that's going to change anytime soon. But I don't think that's where we sit back and simply accept there isn't anything we can do. And I think when we talk about building capacity through sharing, I think we need to be really, really creative and thinking about what we can do, because there are many things we can't affect, but we know, and I think early years communities is a good example of this, that when you come together and share, you can get more bang for your buck. And I think being creative and thinking about, is there anything else in our toolkit we can use? Is there anything we haven't tried that is going to make our resources spin further? And that doesn't mean that it's okay that early years has always been asked to run on a shoestring. But if we can't do anything about it, what else could we do that will make things go further? I think that's where we would want to focus.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Amelia. There's no other questions as far as I can see.
I know you've got a packed agenda, so I'll stop there. But please do, if there's any thoughts you have afterwards, please do drop me a line. I'm always pleased to hear from any of you. But also, hopefully, this is a conversation that's what the Early Years Partnership is for. This be a conversation that we keep having over a long period of time about our big strategic direction. So I hope I'll be coming back to speak to you very soon.
Thanks, Amelia. Right, I'll just share my screen. Just bear with me, everybody. Okay, so moving forward, just got a few updates in terms of the reforms or the EYFS 2021. I'm trying to get it in my head to say that, which is obviously coming our way pretty quickly. Just to remind you all of some of the resources that are on our team's website. We are building on that as the weeks go on. So the section of the website provides information, obviously links, and there is a toolkit of suggested ways that you can or choose to help your planning or your assessment, etc. But there's only one suggestion. Obviously, all of you will be developing things yourselves. There's also a YouTube playlist, so all of the fully funded training that we've been doing, we've pre-recorded, and they are all on there as a list that you can click on and watch the training. So lots of information there, and clearly there's so much out there as well. Alistair Bryce-Clegg, Julian Grenier, they have blogs, lots of information on the reforms. So please do, have a search to see what's out there. There is a new service that's been provided by the DfE. You all should have heard about this. The link workers sent it out via their network. So if you haven't heard about it, you can access this now. These slides will be coming out, so don't worry about noting this down. But you can go onto the DfE pages and they have all of the areas of learning there with suggested resources, activities and short videos as well to prompt discussion and learning. This is just a screenshot of that page so you can see what's there. And then you'll see that it's split into the various aspects, the things that you need to really kind of concentrate on. This has come directly from the educational programs, and then some videos, as I said, for you to use. So although it doesn't give you any kind of examples of planning or assessment, it does give you, a lot of kind of helping hands in terms of thinking about how you're going to put together your curriculum from September. It's just a plea from us, really, and obviously this has been a key message that has come out of our reforms training. But if you haven't had a chance to yet, at the very least, please look at the educational programmes in the EYFS 2021. These are what should be shaping your curriculum. These are a must. They are a statutory, legal requirement for everybody in the settings. So obviously look at the children in your cohorts, the age groups that they are, and make sure that the educational programs are used as the starting point, the skeleton for your curriculum programs for the children in your settings. I haven't got anything else on the reforms tonight, because I'm conscious that this is obviously more of a collaborative meeting, but our information evening on Thursday, I've got a few more slides concentrating a little bit more on continuous provision and talking about how that can really influence, children's outcomes and the provision that we are meeting through our curriculums. And so that's on Thursday evening, so please do join us for that. Okay, so moving on to funding and budget updates. Tonight's is only a short one. We are in the kind of time in the year where we're consolidating, we're looking at previous budgets, but we're not yet thinking about setting budgets for next year. That will be coming. So in September, we will start the conversation in the partnership group and obviously share with you our thinking and share with you as much information as we possibly can about the budgets from the previous year and what that means for the year ahead. So again, just a bit of background information to remind you and for those who weren't able to join the last partnership meeting. So obviously we're all about the early years block, and that simply refers to the proportion of the designated schools grant, or DSG as you might hear it referred to, that is allocated to early years, and obviously we get a proportion of that allocated to us. So the way that they calculate that block is initially calculated using part-time equivalents. Obviously, children in the early years are not at statutory school age, and the EYE, the early years entitlement, gives them universal 15 hours or that extended hours. So a part-time equivalent child is the equivalent of a child taking up 15 hours per week over 38 weeks. So that's term time, which is what we get funded for. Therefore, a child taking up the 30 hours, the extended entitlement, is counted as 2 part-time equivalents. So we account for both. So for the universal base rate factor, so this is how we work out actually the hourly rate that you get as a provider, the pupil count is the part-time equivalent numbers of the 3- and 4-year-old pupils recorded on the previous 2 January censuses. So it's the most recent census and the one previous to that. And then this is multiplied by the 15 hours by your term dates, 38 weeks, and that's then multiplied by your LA's hourly funding rate, and that's how we get the early years block. So in addition to the hourly rate, as many of you will already know, we also have early years pupil premium and the early years disability access fund. Both of those budgets this year have been underspent. So if you do think that any children in your settings are eligible for early years pupil premium or early years disability access fund, then please do investigate whether you can actually apply for that on their behalf. Again, just to remind you, out of that entire early years block that's taken from the DSG, Somerset Local Authority retains 3% of that for central services. And in our last meeting, I went through those central services, such as the English as an additional language services, interpretation and translation services, for example, amongst the others. 3% is a low amount to retain. Many local authorities take the maximum that they can, and that's 5%. So we really do in Somerset give back the majority that we possibly can to you. And Kim raised a really great point earlier about, funding levels being low. We absolutely appreciate that. So we do everything we can to give the maximum amount back to the sector, and we are always working on your behalf to make sure that we're getting to the ears of the right people to make sure that they really know the impact of these low funding rates. So as it was at month 10, so this is the 2021 budget that has just passed, obviously at the end of March financial year, that was sitting at 29,100,644. So you can see, it is a really massive kind of budget, a proportion out of the designated schools grant that we are able to then access on your behalf. And the outturn position, as we know, because these budgets are always retrospective for early years, makes it quite complicated, but it means that we do ultimately get it right in terms of being funded accurately. The outturn position will not be known this year until November. I wanted to share with you some kind of changes for this year only, subject to COVID, obviously. But because of the impact and the uncertain times that we have been through, because of COVID, we're going to be funded slightly differently this year than we normally would be. So normally we would be basically funded on a once a year head count, the census, the earlier census, as you all know about. This year it's going to be different because we recognise that potential occupancy has been low, and term on term that may have changed. So the DfE are temporarily varying their approach over the next financial year. So they're going to fund every LA on the basis of termly attendance for this year only, rather than the whole year. And that's to ensure that the funding aligns with attendance as children return to their sittings following this uncertain period, and obviously take up their free entitlement for the first time as well, after lockdown restrictions were and are eased. So local authorities will continue to pay providers for actual attendance. So we will still obviously be using the normal process of the estimate form, the actual form, and then the adjustment, so that we know we're paying for actual attendance. But retrospectively, the DfE are going to make sure that as a local authority, we're well funded to be able to continue with that process. So there will be a couple of extra census type things that are going on. One has already concluded. That was in May. So that was the week commencing the 17th of May. We're going to be returning that data to the DfE on the 19th of July, and then that process will happen again in the autumn term. So the DfE will then retrospectively fund us for any under or overfunding that has occurred that year, and it will be based on actual occupancy levels rather than predicted occupancy, which, as I've said, has been very difficult to establish this year because of COVID. Before we just move on to Heather's sufficiency report, does anybody have any questions? I'll try and answer them as best as I can. Again, if you prefer to send through things through the chat or email me, I will put my email address in the chat in a minute. Please do email through any questions that you might have. Okay, I'll move on to Heather. Heather, would you prefer to share your screen, or do you want me to just do the slides for you?
Can I do the slides? Is that okay?
Yeah, I will stop sharing for a moment.
Oh, good evening, everybody. Oh, sorry, the slides have disappeared now. Then
oh, sorry, I thought you wanted to put them up. That's what I was asking. Apologies.
Take control. Oh, dear. Thank you. I'll just say when to move on then, that's fine. Good evening, everyone. My name's Heather Stebbing, and I'm the early years lead for sufficiency. So I just wanted to say a few words about what the childcare market is looking like in Somerset at the moment, and what we actually mean by the term sufficiency. So if we could move on a slide. This is a map of Somerset divided up into the 11 early years community areas, just to show you how we've divided up the county. And we use those areas to help us gauge the sufficiency of places. So the next slide. The actual duty of the local authority is to secure sufficient childcare for working parents and those undertaking training or education so far as is reasonably practicable, and that's from the Childcare Act 2006. And I suppose the most important words there is reasonably practicable, because we can't always meet all the parents' demands at the times and the dates when they want. It does depend on the capacity of our settings, and also there has to be a degree of flexibility on both sides there. So we want to be able to give parents a choice of quality, affordable places, and that's what we aim to do. Why is sufficiency important? It's because the childcare market supports the local economy, and education for early years is absolutely critical, as we all know, for giving children the best start in life. Overall in Somerset, we've got sufficient childcare. However, there are hotspots and gaps in provision. And when parents are struggling to find a childcare, we do have a childcare finder service, and the link is on that slide for you, just to remind you that you can signpost parents there if they're unable to find the childcare that they need. So next slide, please. So sorry, this is a little bit small, but it's just showing you the actual numbers as at June 2021. So we've got 244 childminders and 298 groups that offer naught to places for children aged between 0 and 5. So the childcare market continually changes as a result of socio and economic parental demand factors, but in Somerset at the moment, the majority of places are delivered by the PVI sector, private, voluntary and independent sector. However, there's an increasing number of schools offering childcare and some providers moving on to school sites. And our schools like to work in partnership with local childcare providers, especially with childminders, to offer wraparound care and things like that. So it is important that we all try and work in partnership and know what is around and out there. So next slide, please. So I'm just going to briefly say what we do to determine if there are enough childcare places for everyone, and that's basically look at demand versus supply. So what factors affect demand for places? All sorts of things really, but in the pandemic we've seen people choosing to work from home more, so therefore they don't want childcare on their commute route like they used to. Some of them are using informal childcare more as well. We have got a decreasing birth rate, and so by 2025, I think there'll be about 3,000 less primary school places needed. The other things affecting demand is all the new housing. Everywhere we go, there seems to be new housing lately. And that affects our calculations and working out sufficiency. So next slide. The supply of places is down to all our lovely providers, some of whom do retire or move, and unfortunately some have closed. We find that this does affect us in the rural areas a lot. Also, some of the school and academy nurseries only take from 2, so we're seeing a lack of baby places across the county, which I'll talk about in a minute. Next slide. So this is a slide which shows very roughly what the possible worst case scenario is. It's very hypothetical, and what we use is the birth rate and a formula for working out how many early years places will be required per housing. So the red shaded areas show where we're potentially short of spaces. So as you can see from that, it's the baby places 0 to 1 that we're short of most across the county. On the whole, we've got enough places for 2-year-olds, and mostly we're okay for 3- and 4-year-olds, depending on the term. But what we use this for is to determine where the hotspots are. So what makes a hotspot? It could be a geographical area where more places are needed, or an area where there's more housing needed, an area identified as being short in specific age groups or specialisms. And it's important to note that this is very hypothetical, because we know that it doesn't take into account not every child born is going to want a childcare place, and informal childcare plays its part. Some of you are grandparents like myself who do that on occasions, and we also use regular sufficiency meetings around the county so that we can try and get news from on the ground about what's happening out there. So we also use that intelligence to help us put in bids for Section 106 funding and CIL funding which is where we can secure funding from new developers to help with nursery places. Next slide. What we have noticed a lot is the reduction in childcare in childminder numbers, and since 2015 we've lost about a third of our childminders, which is really disappointing. It's for various reasons, and it is a national picture. So at the moment we are on a recruitment campaign to try and get more childminders. So next slide. So hopefully some of you will be aware of our recruitment campaign and listen to BBC Radio Somerset last Saturday, where we had Emily Krause telling us how wonderful it is to be a childminder. Thank you, Emily, for that contribution. And we're offering £250 grant at the moment for new childminders who can offer entitlement places. So it's all about raising the awareness and positives of being a professional childminder and all the benefits that can bring, such as being your own boss and being flexible. And they do offer a lot of flexibility for parents. So that's just a brief highlight of what we're doing. When we look around Somerset, we've got our urban communities and our rural communities. And over the last year, I've just had a look, and it's the rural communities where perhaps we can't absorb in the childcare market the losses quite as well, due to parents needing to travel further and there not being so many other providers around. So luckily at the moment we're fairly sufficient overall, but we have lost a few of our small preschool settings in rural areas. On the upside, we've seen some increases in settings in school sites. We've got a new nursery being planned in Comitro in Taunton as part of the new housing development there. We've just had a new nursery open at Willowdown, Bridgewater. We've got Mama Bears who've opened in Bridgewater, and the Learning Tree in Chilcompton. So we are seeing new nurseries open. Sadly, we've seen Shepton Beecham Preschool, which will be closing this summer term, and Chedsoy Preschool. And as I said earlier, a few childminders that are going. So what we do is keep an eye on the whole picture and try and determine those hot spots. So what can you do about it as settings? It's quite important, I think, to understand how to market your provision. And our concerns for going forward is that the government's financial support is being rolled back, and we understand how that will be difficult and how recruitment is difficult at the moment as well. At the same time, you're facing increased costs all the time, and the business rates would be restarting, and there's lots of changes to cope with. So if you want to find out about the sufficiency in your area, do email us and we can provide sufficiency reports which will help you. We would encourage you to look at your own market and see what you can do. Next slide. So the early years team are here to offer you support, to help you understand your business models, to help you research the market, and we're here to support any new settings that wish to expand, especially in areas that we've targeted where we've got insufficient childcare. And please help parents and families be aware of their entitlement funding, because that's really important and can help them access childcare and help reduce the cost. Besides the normal entitlement funding, there's all the universal credits, the tax-free childcare, and it's just making sure that parents know what they're entitled to so that they can help their children. And the benefits are so huge, aren't they, in the early years? If we get it right there, it helps later on. So that was just a quick run through of how we work out sufficiency, and if anyone's got any questions, I'd happily take them. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. As I said to everybody, this is the first time really that we're talking about sufficiency in this way, and we do plan to do this more often in the future and make everybody aware of what the picture is across the county. So, so I hope you found that helpful and an insight into, you know, how Heather and the team are looking into supporting this and monitoring it really closely to avoid, you know, a crisis happening. Any questions for Heather? Again, please do use the chat if you'd like, or if you'd like to ask questions following the meeting, then I'm sure Heather would welcome your emails or my emails in the chat as well. So please do email me if you'd like to. And Sharon said, very helpful. Thanks, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to hand over to Nikki Gifford and Sarah Love now. Sorry, I keep going back to the wrong page, and they're going to do a session on workforce development, thinking outside of the box.
Thanks, Alison. Hi, a lot of you have trained with me and myself and Sarah before, so you know that each one of us will chip in where it's necessary. We've got a rough format of how we're going to present. So Alison mentioned thinking outside the box. I'm hoping that we have some suggestions or new ideas for you to think about. If Alison goes to the next slide, that 1 in 4 settings actively recruiting for a total of 14,700 vacancies. It's a bit scary, and it is a major concern. And a few weeks it made national news when there were a few nurseries talking about how they are suffering and they might have to turn parents away due to not having been able to meet the ratios. So what are the key challenges? So, and we all know this, before COVID, the sector was already facing the pressures of low recruitment levels of a skilled workforce, especially level 3 practitioners coming forward for the roles. You know, and that's for a major of things: work-life balance, working patterns, furlough. All of these have had an impact. You know, people are managing on less money and thinking, actually, do I need to work those 10-hour days? No, I don't. Low wages, which links to underfunding across the early years sector. You know, and again, those impacts are financial strain, relying on in-work benefits. You know, it links to affordability to recruit and retain high qualified staff, especially in the PBI sector, which has had a direct impact on the quality of provision. You know, and again, the other financial strains that are on a setting, you know, are minimum wage, pension contributions. You know, and that quote in the grey where it says 44.5% of practitioners rely on some form of in-work government benefits. You know, again, another fact which you think, oh, undervalued sector in the wider field. Now, again, changing the narrative. We need to shift from the childcare terminology so frequently used to early childhood education in order to position the sector as a phase within the education journey rather than only means of enabling parents going to work. So again, it's something we need to think about. We've talked about the decline in the proportion of level 3 qualified staff, and that links to that quote in blue, which again, you know, when I researched this, made me think, you know, is this true? You know, 90,000 childcare workers were 55 years old or above, meaning a significant number will be exiting the workforce in the next 10 years. So does that mean our crisis is going to get worse, or actually does that mean we have 10 years to actually fix this crisis? We need to look at that. We need to think about that. Downward trend in apprenticeships. You know, again, there's a report from CEDA in 2019 where there were barriers for recruiting apprentices, which was lack of funds, lack of time to support assessment and on-the-job training, the need for compliance with job training requirements. And we know, and I'm talking about the early years team, from your experiences that you've told us, is about the quality of candidates that come forward. Now, some of these have been addressed as there is funding out there for employers now, re-apprenticeships, and the ages of apprenticeships have been increased. So there is some positive, you know, that are coming out of these things. The other issue there is about no clear path progression. And again, if Ali clicks again, there should be a reflective question that comes up. You know, so what opportunities are there within your childcare setting? You know, again, we need to think about that. And the other one that links to low pay, which I didn't mention, was the one in red. You know, 11% of full-time early years staff work more than 42 hours per week, compared to 3% of retail and 6% of the female workforce. So again, you can understand why people leave. And, you know, if they're on those budgets and they're tight budgets, they're going to look for those roles. And we know, and I'm going to use Sedgemoor as an example, you know, we've had Hinkley Point out there that pay excellent wages for jobs where you go 9 till 5 and you come home and there's no responsibility. So again, we need to think about that. And there is a progression chart. So when you're talking about opportunities, there is a progression chart available. It's called Early Years Career Progression Map. And if you put that into your search engine. So again, if you're talking to new, you're going to school fairs or whatever, which we're going to mention in a minute, you can mention this map and say, look, actually, yes, you come into early years, but it does give you the experience and you could, you know, develop into something else. Because again, that is a big issue. Next slide, Alison, please. And again, this is just something, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it was a report that came out in January 2021, and it was called A Workforce in Crisis, Saving Our Early Years. And they have made recommendations, which I will talk about on the last slide. So again, it gives you the percentage there, you know, and low pay was the highest factor of why people were leaving. And again, down the side of the boxes, these were just came from the same thing, but like 68% needed an increase in pay. Now, we know that you can't just do that in early years because you have got that amount of money that you've got to abide by with the funding. 55% wanted more recognition of good work. Yes, we can do that. 32% needed more time with the children. And again, Ofsted have listened to that because actually we've reduced the paperwork. The big one there is only 37% would stay in their current role. So again, that's what we've got to address. So again, all of this, you know, and this isn't just about, you know, those key issues. We're hoping then, and Sarah's going to talk to you about recruiting ideas, and then we're going to look at retention, because again, that is a big thing in this. So actually, why are those 37% thinking of moving? I'll hand over to Sarah.
Well, thank you very much for all that doom and gloom. We're going to have a look at some of the recruiting ideas, and you know, as you all well know, you know, Nick and I have been here for a little while and trying to come up with new ideas constantly about how we can move things forwards and recruit successfully is always something that we're looking at. But we do have mechanisms, and social media is becoming more and more positive or usable. So, you know, a good social profile is certainly worth setting up. And sending out some kind of post and telling your followers what's happening in your setting, and if you have a vacancy. And I know I did a little bit of research. I had about 5 minutes in between meetings today where I just did a little bit of a look, and you know, there's a huge percentage of settings now advertising not through the paper, not through the usual channels, but using in particular Facebook to advertise vacancies, sorry. So, you know, and you can also pay. It doesn't have to be unpaid. You can also pay for your post on Facebook to be uplifted, to go out at certain times, and this can cost as little as £5. And when you think you're looking at an article in a paper, or you know, essentially, I think the lowest cost to put an advert in a paper that I saw the other day was around about £65, and I'm talking a very small article, so, or advert. So, you know, there are different ways of doing that. Industry blogs, make a direct approach and offer to pay for the advert. Try to negotiate coverage on their social media channels as part of the deal. And I think actually there is an emphasis talking to employers. You know, if you've got a big employer locally, then I think there is advantages to talking to them to say that, you know, you essentially provide childcare for those workers. So how are we going to work in partnership at being able to collaboratively move forward in, one, filling places within our provision, but also two, about looking for staff. Think about locally what's happening. The press, as I've said, can be really quite costly, but actually a lot of the press, if you write your article, take your own photo and send it in, they normally publish it. And then, of course, you've got all of your old school elements, you know, putting your libraries and your notice boards in your local shops. It might not work every time, but, you know, sometimes someone may come through. And again, if we think about local development, so if we're thinking about the development, we got quite often in the past when we're looking at marketing, we've said to you, you know, contact the developer, see if you can put your details in their prospectus, in their housing prospectus. If you've got a vacancy, put that in there. You don't know who's moving in from out of county. That might well be an early years practitioner, that might well, you know, moving into the area, might be wanting to look for a job. So just thinking about those elements as well. Think about your own parents, your staff. Do they know of anybody that might be interested? Some companies offer incentives, but again, and I'm very briefly looking at some of the chat questions, which we'll review at the end of this section, about parents saying, yeah, well, that's all well and good, but that's a cost as well. If you've had previous vacancies and you've had people apply but have not been right for the job at that time, then you can always ask them at the end of the interview process, if another position came available, would you be happy for us to contact you? So it's also not necessarily always having to go out to advert. You might have some candidates that weren't successful at that time, but you may wish to revisit. Obviously, you need to ensure that they've got the time frame that you're holding their details for. Employment open days, you know, have an open day, invite people around, sell yourself, sell your setting, have staff around to answer questions. Talk to your local colleges, talk to your local secondary schools, you know, talk to the school careers fairs. As an early years team, and Heather normally heads up this. Heather normally heads up our attending our careers fairs that we get invited to. And absolutely, you know, get yourself involved. If you've got vacancies and a careers fairs coming up, it's well worth getting an invite to attend. And obviously, if you're hitting those secondary schools, when you're talking to children that are looking at options, it's getting in there and selling the early years sector to those young people, and then thinking about offering school placements, so that you can provide opportunities for them, and they understand the expectations. We would strongly recommend that you have some sort of recruitment strategy. Think about what's happened in the past. Think about what's happened and what's worked well, and think about, well, actually, what didn't we do? So just think about having that potential strategy, and look also about what you want from a person you're appointing. How can you support them to fill the role? So you know, Nick and I went to a session delivered by I can't remember who delivered it, but about retention, and they were talking about home growing your practitioners. So it is about potentially that parent that might be interested in volunteering in the first instance, and then you grow them through to your setting, and that clear career progression goes with that. And we do need to also think about those elements. It's not just going from practitioner to deputy to supervisor, stroke manager. You know, it's all of those things. It's about having an area of responsibility around the SEND. It's about that DSL. It's about that environment practitioner, you know, that practitioner that's really passionate about the environment. So it's those other areas of career progression as well that you need to that can be considered. So there are ways and means out there to fill vacancies, but we totally do acknowledge that it is very difficult. And alongside that is also comes, you know, as always, your reputation, and also about how you retain your staff and what you do for your staff and how you work as a model, which I think will lead nicely into your next slide, Nikki. You're on mute, love.
I just said thank you, Sarah. That was very well done. And just to give you an idea of thinking outside the box, it won't work in early years, but I found it quite useful yesterday. IKEA wanted to recruit some staff, so they put leaflets in every piece of flat packed furniture that was in there. So, and they had 4,500 apply for 200 and something jobs. So again, and we know it's thinking outside the box, and I'm hoping Sarah gave you some ideas there, especially around the paid, you know, on Facebook, which, you know, like we said, it's £5. You just need to monitor it on how many likes and whatever. And again, there's more information on the net on those sorts of things. So again, have a look. But Sarah's right. Retention is a big thing now, isn't it? Because actually we all know, and, you know, we don't want to teach you to suck eggs, as they say, but we need to make sure that you're just aware of that. And we also know practitioners leave for a variety of ways. You know, they might move out of the area, you know, they might retire, you know. So we're in that situation where practitioners can pick the roles that they want. They can pick the hours that they want to do. And again, we also know it's not always about the money. We know the money is not good, but it isn't always about the money. Sometimes it's how they feel valued. And that was one of the things that came up. And they need to be valued in their role, and they need to be valued as a person. And, you know, the main one is to lead by example, isn't it? So if you have a lot of staff leaving, you need to be thinking actually about those exit interviews and why are they leaving? You know, and it might not always be the manager that does those exit interviews. You know, Sarah's nodding, we've been there. You know, it might be that you get the deputy to do that, because they won't always say what, you know, what they should be saying. And, you know, there's a lot of reasons for that as well. But again, we need to look at that. So that's, you know, there's a lot of reflection tonight, but that is one reflective thing. You know, that shared vision, which we've been talking about a lot about in the OFS reforms, you know, again, they need to feel they're part of something. You know, they know the settings values and are working towards them. They feel valued, they are listened to, you know, and within that, it's about working as a team. And we've been saying that all along the OFS reforms, you know, it is about team working. Everybody needs to develop that curriculum or develop your planning. This is the same. So again, we've got a lot of circles up there, or a lot of ovals, whichever way you want to. But professional development, I know there's been some chat about level 3s, and Ali's put a really nice link into there, because there are some free level 3 qualifications available. And again, but it is eligible adults. We know there is a cost to professional development, but staff need to be aware that they need to be responsible for keeping themselves up to date. You know, again, I'm old school. There was a time that, you know, settings could pay for some part of the training. They might say, well, I'll pay for your training, but you have to do it in your own time. And that's fine, because at the end of the day, those qualifications, those training opportunities go with the staff, don't they? So you know, you need to support, but the staff needs to put in as well. You know, ensure they have all the information about training events. We've put a lot of free training on. We know it was limited to number per places on the course, but actually there was no reason why one person couldn't attend on the Monday and another on a Tuesday, and then come back as a group and talk about that. You know, also keeping staff up to date is ever changing. Sorry, I've got an echo. Ever changing world, especially in childcare, with the ever changing legislation and requirements. You know, that's always happening. Communication relationships. Really, that should be a nice orange one, really, shouldn't it? Because actually, effective communication is vitally important to maintain and developing employee engagement. You know, meetings, emails, listening, lunch, and you've all been excellent at that through the COVID, because we know you've had staff off, you've kept in contact with them, you know, and again, this also links with your parents and everything else, doesn't it? You know, it's a big part of this. Value and recognise your people. You know, again, support, supervisions, being available. You know, again, COVID has shown us the importance of keeping in touch. appreciation, just general manners. How are you? You know, did you have a good day? You said your mum was poorly. You know, how is she now? And, you know, I'm saying this, you think, well, we do that already, but I know, and I know Sarah knows that as well, that doesn't happen everywhere. You know, I've worked in settings or taken over settings where that hasn't been a key thing. And actually staff, when you start appreciating them, they come out with things, they say things, they get more involved. So again, sometimes it's just taking a step back, isn't it? Right tools for the right jobs. And again, me and Sarah do a lot of business thing, and maybe you allow your leaders within rooms to have a budget. You give them the responsibility. You know, if they ask you for something, you use that solution approach. You say, why do you need this? What is the impact? What is the cost? Is there another way? And again, links to your environment, somewhere to hang your coat, to have a cup of tea. Now, I am very aware that this is not always possible in all settings, but if you do have a dedicated staff room, make it comfortable, not a storage area. And we know storage is a bit of a problem. Sarah talked about investing in your future leaders in the previous slide, you know, offering those challenges and responsibilities, you know, empowering your slide. You know, the previous one mentioned that 5% left due to no career progression. And Sarah mentioned it doesn't have to be manager or deputy. That could be taking the lead for the book area, taking the lead for health and safety. So again, it's having those conversations with them. Give employees a say. You know, the revised EOFS is all about working as a team. Everyone needs to be able to have their say and be listened to. But again, they also need to be aware that the views will be listened to, they'll be discussed, but they may not always be actioned. But again, give them the reasons why you don't do that. Coaching and mentoring. Again, you've got new staff or staff who need additional support through other members of the team. And again, that could be, you know, your person that's enrolled, but say you've got a deputy, then they could liaise and coach and mentor. It might be you've had an experience level 3 that could help with your apprentices. Again, it's just think of different ways. Reduce paperwork. You know, Work-Life Matters reported that 70% of practitioners cited paperwork and admin as a regular source of stress. Ofsted and the DfE have listened. We know there may be some stress at the moment with the upcoming changes, and you're all looking at your paperwork and you're all tweaking it or developing it. But remember, what you feel works for you, keep. But, you know, again, you need to keep everyone in the loop. Work-life balance. And again, this is why one of the reasons why we are finding it hard to find staff, because I think staff or any person that's either been on furlough or shorter hours have got used to that. So they're thinking, actually, like I said earlier, why go back to that? You know, and staff survey. Both Sarah and myself through this presentation, we've mentioned figures from surveys within, you know, but these are countrywide. You know, complete your own. Talk to your staff. The importance is act on the results. This does not mean you have to action every point raised, but you need to discuss and come to some common solutions. And the last one, which isn't up there, but is have fun. You know, this is an important aspect of an employee engagement. If you love what you do, it feels more than a job and you like coming to work. And if you know that you've got a problem and you can go and talk to someone, and again, you know, we've come from a very large team to a very small team, but we do have that appreciation of each other and what they can do. So again, appreciation of each other's skills is also important. And Sarah, do you want to read the quote? Because you found this lovely quote, Alison.
Takes a little while to come off. Yeah, it was. I just thought this was lovely. I thought, you know, coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress, and working together is success. And that was from Henry Ford. And I just thought that summed it up quite nicely, really. You know, we come together in the first instance, we work together and stay together, and we make progress. And when we actually get it right, we are truly successful. And if you are truly successful, people see that and want to work for you. If they see that, they want to work for you.
And at the bottom there, I've put the workforce in crisis. That was the latest document, and they put out some recommendations which they've passed to government, and it links to something Alison's put in the post there about providers, you can lobby your local MPs, because what came out of this workforce in crisis report was, again, funding, equity and clarity. So government should provide additional resources for settings which are needed to ensure sufficiency of provision. Change in perceptions of the early years career path. So again, it's focusing on, you know, the critical importance of early childhood education on child's development and life chances, and portray the crucial role in early years professionals play, who play in supporting this. Changing the narrative, we talked away, so come away from childcare, early childhood education and training. So there should be an urgent exploration and extension of accessible flexibility offered through continual professional development. And the last one was fair pay, recruitment and retention. You know, early years staff must be recognised and rewarded with a level of pay that reflects their essential role. And again, going back to what Sarah said, we need to work together to ensure everyone is hearing this message. So again, lobby your MPs, use this report, use the actions from that, and you know, you are going to get, this is going to be, this is recorded, I think, and it will be there. So again, you can take things. If you need to know any more, then just give me a shout.
I think, Nick, can I just say there that in fact actually is going back to the question that Kim posed to Amelia, or someone posed in the chat I think. Do we lobby the government in regards to our funding? Categorically, yes, we do. We do it all the time. However, the biggest voice is your voice. It's not a local authority officer's voice. The biggest voice is yours. So absolutely, you lobby away.
Definitely, and thank you. We will take questions if you have any. Oh, sorry, Alison, we went over time as well. I apologise.
No, you haven't. You're 5 minutes early. Well done.
Oh.
There was a question that came through. Do you have to advertise posts if you have people who would like to work in your setting and you need staff?
You can internally advertise, but Alison, Ali put in an answer to that is, you know, if you advertise outside, you widen the net. But again, that's that process that you have, isn't that recruitment strategy? It might be that you think, right, actually we'll fill that internally. So say you advertise for a deputy, you might feel that you have people in the team that would be really good at that and have got those leadership skills. You internally recruit them, and then you externally advertise for the role that you will have. So and
if it's if it's a vacancy that's very quick, I mentioned about looking at previous candidates that might have been successful. That's okay in that short time frame, 3 to 6 months. However, if it's longer than that, then potentially you would look to go out to advert. But I totally agree with Ali in the respect that, you know, you do widen that opportunity, but there's nothing wrong with you inviting someone to apply for the position. What the most important thing is that you follow the recruitment process, you follow the interview, you follow with the references, you know, you follow with all of the various checks that you need to be in place. That is the most important thing. So, you know, there's no reason why you can't invite someone to apply, but you must follow those steps.
We say for recruitment steps, yeah, absolutely. There's just another one that's come through from George. Like the thinking, I was thinking about ex-members of staff who might want to come back for short-term contracts in busy terms and for bank staff / long-term sick.
Yeah, and you can approach them, like Sarah said. What you need to remember is you would need to give them a contract, whether it's a specific time period contract or whatever. But again, when you get to the end of that contract, you need to have them in and give them notice periods so they're aware that that contract finishes. But other than that, no, you can invite like past members, and you've also got that knowledge of them as well, haven't you? And they know your setting.
But don't be complacent. If they've not been with you, you still got to do your DBS checks. You still got to do your induction check, you know, your induction for that staff member. Yeah. Still got to do your references because there's a break in employment.
Okay, thank you both. That was really comprehensive. That really, really helpful. Okay, so Sarah, you're staying on to do the early years communities update. Thank you, Nikki.
You lucky lot. Yes, so early years communities where are we with the early years communities? So following lockdown, our early years communities are coming back, are moving forward, have got some absolutely fabulous plans ahead of us. In fact, actually, I went to a meeting this morning with the Frome and Shepton early years leads, and they've got a lovely packed academic year going forward of absolutely super CPD. So all of the communities are starting, well, sorry, I should rephrase that. All of those communities have operated continuously through the pandemic. Some of our communities were a little dormant, but have now certainly woken up and are moving forward. So we still actively have the 11 communities. We're looking at all sorts of CPD opportunities, speech and language, reading and writing, phonics, curriculum development. Yeovil are doing a buddying model around the 7 key features of the reforms, the EYFS. So and we were really looking forward to some of the feedback there. It's a little bit hard at this moment in time because the early years communities reporting mechanism is due at the end of this term. So being part of the way through the summer term, I'm working on spring information, so to speak. But we're certainly looking forward to hearing how that system has worked in Yeovil, and again we'll put we'll look at putting information on how that's worked and whether others are interested in doing it. Taunton has created a newsletter, and has also invited the other communities to post anything in that newsletter if they so wish to. So thank you very much, Taunton. We've got some areas which are the larger areas are doing a cluster sessions within those areas to make sure that they get the information that they can from their providers about what they need. And the other thing as well is some of the early years communities have held back on putting the EYFS reforms CPD training on because of the amount of training that the early years team have put out. However, they do hold a ring-fenced amount of money to be able to put supportive CPD opportunities out there in the new term, in the autumn term. So if you do want something specific or you're concerned with any particular area, do contact your leads and they will be able to provide you or they can take on board your ideas and see if they can pull some training up and into the autumn term. So they do have that ring-fenced funds. Next slide, please. Really pleased to say that we have been able to purchase every early years provider a My First Emotions toolkit and the selection of items there. This is a toolkit to support providers in looking at children's emotions and working with them to understand emotions. We've also negotiated, not all of those resources, we're going to have a few extra resources in the packs because we've actually negotiated a few extra bits and pieces to go in there. We're looking at those to be delivered in sort of September to October next year. They will be going to a central point in each of your early years communities. So one of the leads has stepped forward to take receipt of the toolkits. And then what they will do is they will arrange a event for you to come along and pick up your toolkit, and this includes childminders, schools and preschools. They will pick up your toolkit and they will have a little very short training session by Dr. John Lambie, who created the sets, and he will go. One of the training sessions is around how to use the kit, and one of them is very short around the theory behind the kits. And what we're hoping to do is get these out to you guys so you can use in the settings, but also using the emotion books which come in the pack to support parents in understanding their children's emotions and for parents to learn. So we want this very much to go out and be a very useful toolkit, not just for the setting, but for the parents as well. And again, some communities are looking to add additional items to their toolkits as well. As I say, in Shepton, they're talking about using the, and I'm looking around to see if I've got it, but I haven't, the All Emotions Are Okay book that has been created by Dr. Sarah Temple, who delivers our emotion coaching. And this is a really useful book, both for practitioners and parents, really easy to read, but gives really good understanding about how to deal with emotions and how to talk about those emotions with the children. So again, if that's something that you're interested in, you might well want to speak to your early years lead about a potential collective purchase. And Alison, if I can move you on, that brings us beautifully into the emotion coaching. So we're rolling out the emotion coaching. We've been really positively received. This takes us right the way through to March next year, the training session. So if you haven't booked on, then please do. As we said, we've done 2 sessions so far, and there's been 60 practitioners in attendance. It has all been very, very well received. Some of the comments, it's great to be connected to like-minded professionals who understand the value of the training, excellent tips to take back to my setting and to share with my colleagues. They liked the flexi learning, so it's a partially you're in your own time learning, and then you reinforce it with the session with Dr. Sarah Temple. So really positive. So again, I would encourage you, if you haven't, and we will send the link, goes out everywhere. I send it, poor old Ali I'll get her to send it out in the e-bulletin, and whenever I can, I plug the opportunity, get in and book on, because it is fully funded and it's very well worth getting on. And then to complement that, we've actually been able to put another emotion coaching on for parents. So that is, sorry, Alison. Yeah, so that's a mindful emotion coaching for parents, and we have been absolutely overwhelmed. So thank you to you guys, for those that have popped up the poster that's on the slide there. Thank you for advertising it and promoting it to your parents. We have 170 plus parents booked on to that piece of that training, and that was in a space of 5 to 7 days of that going out there. So it absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much for advertising that, because the more we can get everybody talking from the same song sheet and doing, recognizing emotion coaching and the Dan Siegel's analogy of with the hand, the more we can understand children's behaviours and how to deal with that, and support the parents as well. So just very quickly then, future opportunities. So we're hoping to, once the emotion coaching is rolled out across to March next year, what we are hoping to do is to set up in each early years community a networking group, so that we can have practitioners come and reflect and support each other around the emotion coaching approach. We're working collaboratively with public health. Courses have gone out to health visitors, and we're hoping that the midwifery service is going to come on board. So all of those things we're getting schools, early years provisions, health visitors, childminders, all singing from the same song sheet, all looking at that child holistically and that whole family. Coming soon, I've literally come out of a meeting that finished half an hour before the partnership meeting tonight, about working with public health around looking to recruit some practitioners, both from early years, public health visitors and midwifery service, to take them to the next level of emotion coaching, to support them then within their settings. And sorry, I'm on camera. You might want to look at that. And be able to support the settings and support the early years communities with those networking meetings as well. So all of that's coming forward, and it will come through via your early years communities. Apologies for that. My husband's just come home. He's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Well, how long are you going to be?" So that will all happen. Keep your eyes peeled for your emails, and link with your early years leads.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Sarah. It's really exciting to know about the early years communities events coming up, and that emotion coaching, I think, has already been, and I'm sure will be really well received by everybody. It's fabulous. Thank you. Okay, so we are moving on to our partner agency update. Now, I can't remember who I've put in which order, so I'm just going to crack on with it. And if it's you, please do take yourself off camera and feel free to introduce your slides. So Bridgewater and Taunton College first.
Oh, that's me. So there was a bit of conversation throughout today's meeting about PIP training and people not being appropriate for role and not enough people coming into the sector. The good news is that we have got quite a lot of people coming forward wanting to do qualifications with us from September, with a bit of a slowdown during the pandemic, is what you'd expect. But now we've got people coming forward to do various different qualifications that we offer. So I thought it was a good time to share the offer that we currently have in early years for adults and for apprentices. So we've got from level 2 up to level 5. Bit of a note there about the cash qualification level 3 diploma early years workforce. That is dependent on funding. We know the funding is a free course. Oh my goodness, that was taken up so quickly by people. The funding has been used up for this academic year, and we're hoping to get some new funding for next year. So do keep your eye on our website, because if you've got somebody or you want to do a level 3 qualification and you want it free, then this was a course that was offered this year. A few lucky people got it, and then the funding ran out, but the funding could well come back into play. So just, if you do want to do a qualification, or you've got staff who want to do some, come and have a chat and we can talk you through the offers that we have. Thank you.
Rachel, before you go, do you want to just introduce yourself just quickly so people know who?
Oh, sorry. Rachel Gathercole, and I work for Bridgewater and Taunton College. I manage the adult courses and the apprenticeships. I got so excited about my courses I forgot to introduce myself.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks very much. Okay, so next in line. Oh gosh, done it again to me. My computer's got gremlins. So this is University Centre. Anybody from? Oh, hello, Louise. You want to introduce yourself and present your slide?
Louise Hannon, course leader for Early Childhood Studies degree at University Centre Somerset. We're part of Bridgewater and Taunton College, so I have the pleasure of working alongside Rachel. So lots of talk about free training. We also have been doing some short information sessions based on our academic research that we do. We do try and make it really, really appropriate. So there's lots of reflection points in there for staff. This is free for anybody, and we will continue. This is our 8th session that we have. So I'm just putting it in the chat, the actual link that you can sign up with. So that was the first ask from me. The second ask, if I can, is for we're just revalidating our degree at the moment. This means we're looking at what is useful and what is not useful about our degree and what the needs of the local community are. So we've got the national voice. There's lots and lots of kind of information about that. So we've got an embedded level 3. So if they do a degree but they don't have a level 3, there's also a chance for them to do that. So we're looking at keeping that in, but we're really looking for employers' ideas as to what people need within the sector. So yeah, some free training, but also some help with that survey would really, really be helpful. And please do let us know if we can do any research with any of the settings or help in any way. We're more than willing to help if we can. Thanks, Alison.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Louise. And I think that link's just been popped in the chat. So if you'd like to take the short time to fill out that survey, I'm sure that'd be really, really helpful. Thank you. Okay, moving forward on now, we do have Liz Rendell, Operational Service Manager for Public Health Nursing. Oh, my computer's definitely got gremlins. Apologies. There
That's
we
okay.
go.
It's different. Okay, so thank you for inviting me, and I would just like to endorse the emotion coaching, and it's fantastic that it's being offered as a systems-wide approach. I think if we can all sing from the same hymn sheet, then that's got to be positive. So yes, just brilliant. Can I go on to the next slide? Have you got, oh, do you want me to share my slides? Okay, so just I thought I'd just really give you just one or two little updates on what we're doing in public health. So one of the key things that we're rolling out at the moment is ELIM, the Early Identification Measure and Intervention. It's part of the national programme from Public Health England. I'm sure you've heard about it, or you will hear about it quite shortly. It's going to be part of an assessment process during the 2 to 2.5 year review. So we next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So we have trained some trainers. We're rolling out the training to the workforce at the moment, and we're planning to launch the actual assessment and the materials that we're going to be using in September. We do have some gremlins in the background because it's a Public Health England initiative. They really want us to collect data, and at the moment we're between or looking to move to a new system, and so it's difficult to try and collect data currently when we're going into a new system, but we'll get over that one. And I think one of the things that for me is really important is that liaison between early years settings, our early years partners and health visitors and assistant practitioners. So we're really sort of pushing that. Next slide, please. The other bit that we're rolling out with our staff at the moment is kind of a refreshment of our 2.5 year review. So we've rolled out some refreshed training. Our emphasis obviously is on early identification, help and support for needs that we identify. We will be including ELIM in the assessment. We're trying to promote the use of the Red Book as a liaison tool between yourselves and us. So really encouraging health visitors to promote that right through the early years. But it does take time. So could we ask that you ask about the Red Book? Are parents able to share it with you? Can we use it as a liaison tool? And hopefully we'll improve communication. And next one. And then I'm hoping that you've seen a termly newsletter that we've produced. So just really to bring that to you, ask, are you receiving it? Has it been useful? Are you able to share it with parents? So a little bit of feedback from that would be really helpful from us. And if you don't know who your health visiting team link is, do you know how to access us? If not, I'll get through our contact details to you all. If I can send them to Alison or Heather, perhaps they can be distributed. So there's somebody there saying no termly newsletter received.
We have sent it out via the link workers. So if you haven't received that for any reason, please do contact your link worker. We'll make sure you get that out.
Okay, and that's it from me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Liz. Really appreciate that. We do work really closely with Liz and her team to review the 2-year-old integrated review particularly, but other things coming up. So so hopefully Liz will be able to join and update us on lots of things in the future. Thanks, Liz. Okay, over to Sharon from the Early Years Alliance.
Hello, Alison. I was on the ball there because you gave me a sneak preview, but it's been like Jeopardy intrigue, waiting to see whose slides are coming next. So thanks everybody for inviting us and listening to this as well. For those that don't know me, I'm Sharon Bond and I'm part of the EAL advisory team. Thanks, Alison. So we have still been operating throughout the furlough times and COVID pandemic and everything. We've been busy working from home, but we're delighted that we've been out visiting settings around the county since April, and we did get out for a little bit before the second lockdown. So you can request a support visit from us, which is free, which not everything is free these days. So do get in touch with us if you've got any queries or anything you want help or support with any of your EAL children. You can see all our contact details there. And as Liz was talking about the red book, I just popped a little comment in the chat there because we have had them translated into quite a lot of languages on our website, the main sort of pages that families might find useful. So have a look at that. Thanks, Alison. One of the things we have been doing for a few years is what we call focus group work. And that's where either myself or my colleague Louise liaise with you and come in and do a regular weekly sort of session at your setting, where we can work alongside your staff and the children, and we can do all sorts of things like demonstrating our resources and modelling good practice and just giving you sort of support and training, if you like, and just kind of giving your staff confidence, really. But we like doing that. Louise is currently working with Willowdown Nursery in Bridgewater. Thanks, Alison. And as Alison said, when we talked about the budgets and funding, you know, a big thank you and thumbs up and hats off to Somerset Local Authority for being so supportive to you as providers. So as well as myself and Louise, you've also got our partners who can do the translating and can provide support workers for you and do interpreting for you. For any of your Polish families, we've got Diversity Voice, who are based in Somerset. And for any other languages, we have DA Languages, who I believe are based in Manchester. And, you know, as I've said, if you need to use any of these services, by all means, go ahead and contact them yourselves directly and book them directly. But if you need any support with anything like that, then do give Louise or myself a call or an email and we can help you. We've been holding virtual drop-ins for the last term, and we've got our final 2 next month. So July the 7th is a twilight session and July the 21st is an afternoon session. The links are there. The links should be on our website as well. So it literally is just a drop-in. If you've got a question that you want to ask, or you want to ask us something, or you want to book a visit and you think, oh, I'll just do that this afternoon, then that's absolutely fine. We're there for the hour and we're happy to take any questions or talk to you about anything to do with your EAL children. And finally, as we've talked about a few times this evening, social media. We have got a social media Facebook page, so please have a look at that and like us and follow us. And we do post quite a lot of information on there, as you'd expect, stuff that's more national as well as local to you, and stuff not just about EAL but stuff about all sorts of early years information and events. We've got some virtual classroom training that we're planning for the autumn term. There'll be 2 sort of sessions that make up a pack. We've got one for October and one for November. So like I said, keep following our Facebook page or keep looking at our website, and we will, as you know, we always post all our information in the lovely Somerset Early Years bulletins as well. So if any of you haven't heard of us before, you should have. Thanks, Alison.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Thanks, Sharon. Okay, over to Caroline Barnes.
Hi there. I can't turn my camera on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you go to the slides?
Oh, sorry. It's my gremlins in my screen. Apologies.
Thank you. That's great. Sorry you can't see me, the camera won't go on. But yeah, I'm Caroline. I'm Deputy Director at Take Art, and we've got an early years programme that lots of you will be aware of. We've just come to the end of a Sound Waves project, and we've got a sharing of that, which is a music project. That sharing's on the 6th of July, and that's a free event. But I'm really here to talk about Making Believing, which is a new 3-year funded programme. It's funded by the Paul Hamlin Foundation, and it's around creativity and the early years. And there's 3 sort of key areas of it. There's performance, so we'll be bringing performers to settings, and we've been working with Joe Sawyer to identify some settings, but there's lots of opportunity for other settings to come on board as the programme develops. So we're starting off with a tour of an Indian dance company next week in South Somerset, in Yeovil area. So we're bringing performance. We're also going to be working with artists who are going to be in residence in some settings, and they're going to be modelling really amazing creative practice alongside staff. So you were talking earlier about professional development and sort of in-house opportunities. This will be an opportunity for setting staff to work alongside artists and to shadow them, but also for those artists to collaborate with the setting staff. So there's opportunities there. There'll also be CPD things coming online, and we've got a Facebook page as well, which is Take Art Early Years, and there'll be lots of opportunities on there, but we regularly circulate through this forum as well. And the special thing about this project is that we're working with settings in Derby and Surrey as well. So we're hoping to build a learning community so we can compare different results, different research, and different skills in those all across those 3 areas. Yep, if you go on to the next slide. So yeah, Bija Dance is coming to lots of settings in Yeovil next week and the week after. And this is a real first for us because this is working outside because of COVID. So we're working with settings who've got kind of outdoor spaces. We're keeping everything crossed because of the weather. We might have to adapt and go inside, but we're hoping that we'll be outside, and this is a great show. It's all about a train journey across India, lots of dance, lots of visuals and lots of music. And as I said, we'll be working with some settings for artists in residence to go in. And there'll be lots of opportunities for staff to come together and learn and celebrate. But it really is, it's not just about the expressive art and design area of the curriculum, it's working across curriculum areas and really looking at sort of how creativity and early childhood development can be understood more readily. And I think that's the last one. Next, was there one more? That's it. That's me with stripy background, and there's also Jane Parker, who's been leading on our Sound Waves project. So some of you might have seen her at training events as well. But if you're interested or want to get in touch, there's our emails, but I'm sure these slides will be going out with all the others. So yep, that's just a quick update on that project. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. They will be going out. You'll get the slides with all the links on, everybody.
Brilliant, thanks.
Now, I'm conscious that I don't know whether Stuart's here from SAS, because I realise I haven't put your slide on, Stuart. Are you here? If not, I will send the information out, obviously, after the meeting. I'm not sure whether Stuart's with us. Okay, so there is an update from SAS, the Somerset Association Sports Partnership, so I'll make sure that goes out as well. Okay, that does leave us with 10 minutes for questions and debate of any kind. There was one question that's come through about the All Emotions Are OK and also trauma-informed schools. So my question is regarding the All Emotions OK. I've attended the training as well as my colleague, and I've always used the approach for a number of years. It is great that Dr. Sarah Temple is really enthusiastic about this, and the training was great, especially the science behind it and how she gets on with the parents on board. The school is a trauma-informed school. I just wondered why schools seem to be following a trauma-informed school approach in all the early years. I mean, given the emotion coaching approach, is it the same for all schools? Really great question. We know trauma-informed schools has been rolled out across West Somerset. We know there are schools across Somerset that are taking advantage of that as well. It is more aimed at schools at the moment. We are exploring how it can be aimed at earlier settings as well, but what we would want to do is for it to complement the All Emotions OK and certainly not duplicate. So that is something we're looking at, absolutely. But I think as it stands, the All Emotions Are OK training does complement the training given by trauma-informed schools as well.
Yeah, and I think it's also we've rolled out All Emotions Are OK in the West Somerset area as well, so yeah. It's absolutely that complementary element, but what we're wanting to do is just get that initial principled approach about understanding and supporting that child and that family in a holistic way, and then raising those outcomes for those children. So yeah, it needs some more looking into, but essentially for our early years practitioners, we wanted just to get that widespread of understanding and that theory behind it.
Absolutely, thanks, Sarah. So yeah, open to you guys now for your questions. You can either choose to put your hand up and come off mute, and obviously put yourself on camera if you'd like to, or you can put questions in the chat. Obviously, we're here for the next 5 minutes, so please use us while you have us. I'll move the slide on as well, just so I can say a big thank you to everybody before we actually do come to a close at 7 o'clock. But yeah, we are here for the moment or two just to answer any questions. And if you want to email us separately, of course, we will answer your questions via email or give you a ring back if you need us to. And an urge for next meeting, please. We are, I don't have an actual date for the next meeting, but it will be in the autumn term. That'll be before the October half term. It'd be really great if anybody has got agenda items that you feel is worthy of your debate, etc., or our debate during the partnership, then please do put them forward to us, and we will obviously try and put as many on the agenda as we possibly can. This is your meeting, your forum, and we would love to hear the things that you want to discuss, the big picture things from your perspective. And also a big thank you for taking time out yet again of your precious evenings to come and join us. I do hope that you found the information tonight helpful. It's given you a bit of better insight into how partnership aims to move forward, the kind of things you can get involved in.
Alison, we've got a question about, will these meetings continue in this way, in this format?
Well, in terms of virtual, I presume you mean, Penny. Okay, so clearly we have to consider that from a what am I trying to say? Virtual meetings have given us a forum where we can get to lots and lots of people, so lots of people can come together, and we are having better attendance at these kinds of meetings than we were before. Also from a saving the planet perspective, and obviously just being conscious of that as well, we do feel that there should at least be a mix, but we'd be very much interested to hear your views on that, whether you feel that these should be face to face and we could do perhaps 1 or 2 every year and the rest of them virtually. But yeah, I would love to know your opinion. We want to meet everybody's needs, really. But certainly, from our perspective, we've been able to get to more people, I think, virtually, and obviously the fact that you don't have to drive afterwards to get home is a plus point, I presume. A balance of both. Yeah, mostly virtual. Yeah, that sounds along the lines of what we were thinking, Penny, so thank you. Nice comments through about the information and helpful discussions. It's great to know, thank you. We do also have our information evening on Thursday. We are going to try and space them out a little bit next term. So we will do our partnership meeting before October half term and our information evening after October half term. But this is more about kind of discussion and debate. The information evening is obviously to give updates. Oh, thank you, Sharon. Yes, I'm not really into the football, so I didn't realise we were competing with a sporting event with England on the title. Thanks, Kim. Really appreciate that. Yeah, virtual meetings coming for free. I'm absolutely agree with you, Ruth. People do in Somerset have to travel a long way, don't they? So yeah, absolutely. It gives people access when otherwise it might have felt, you know, unachievable.
Alison, I know you asked for agenda items, but if there is something they want us to do, present like we did the recruitment, then please, we're quite happy to do anything like that from the team. So
absolutely. Yeah, perhaps if there's any suggestions, pop them in the chat for us, or come to us obviously individually via email. Great to have agenda items as far in advance as possible, just so we can do the research and get people's views. Thanks, Emma. Balance of both, yeah. That seems to be the consensus. In the autumn term, you know, the budget part will be a bit meatier because we need to start thinking about the financial year ahead from 2022. So there'll be quite a lot of more information on that. I do make it 7 o'clock, so I will hang around just for a couple of minutes if people want to speak to me individually. But as again, you know, thanks so much for joining us this evening, taking time out of your evenings, and yeah, really enjoyed seeing you all, albeit virtually, and look forward to seeing you again really soon. Thanks, everyone.